Hello and welcome to the Village Voice. I am your host, Realtor Kathy Smith. And on a rainy day like it is today, many of us just fuss and cuss about having rain and just kind of dampening our spirits. But, for those of us with some green leaves, they may appreciate that quite a bit today, actually. So I thought today we'd talk a little bit about our indoor environment. With COVID-19 and all of us staying home a lot more than we've been used to, we need to improve our home environment. So why not add a little greenery? So thought about talking about indoor plants today to improve your environment. So being that I'm a realtor and not a horticulturist, I thought I would bring along one who is. So welcome Emily Reed, who is a horticulturist and is well skilled at making things green and making things grow. So we'll connect Emily here in just a moment. And when she comes up, we'll go ahead and get to talking. Why, hello, Emily. How are you?
Hi, Kathy.
Good to see you. So, Emily, tell us a little bit about you and your plant background.
Right on. Kathy, one of my very first memories is of planting tomatoes in my great-grandfather's garden. I've been a plant lover as long as I can remember. However, I've not always been great at taking care of plants. I actually went to school for horticulture, and I've worked at a landscape nursery as a grower. I've managed a garden center, and I've also worked as a horticulturist at a botanical garden.
Wow, that's tell you what, that beats my green thumb. So, Emily, I know that the viewers here are watching, and they probably, some of them probably have never had any indoor plants, or the ones that they've had have just died on them. So, can we talk a little bit about some of the best plants to kind of look for to improve your indoor environment?
Sure. I am hoping today to help push away any of those fears that you might have about keeping houseplants. I think having houseplants, I have a lot, they're my friends, but when they are stressed, I am also stressed. So I want you guys to have a good relationship with your houseplants and be able to take care of them well. That being said, there are some that are a little easier to care for than others. So my number one houseplant I recommend to people who have never kept a houseplant before, might be new, or might have a history of failed plants, is pothos or pothos. Again, I'm going to use some scientific names today. I'll use some common names today. So hopefully I can give you the information you need when you go into your garden center to get the right plant for you. So I have two pothos. This one is a neon pothos. As you can tell by the leaf color, it's very almost chartreuse. And he's getting pretty long. He's very happy in this spot.
Yes, he definitely is.
This is a silver pothos, and let me see if I can get you this beautiful leaf variegation here. It's lovely, absolutely catches the light. I love this. This silver pothos I have has been grown in on the least sunny side of my house, next to a window. This is not where it normally lives. It had to move to come visit you guys today. This neon pothos is in my sunny window. So you can see the growth habit's a little bit different. This is a lot more dense foliage, but both of them are perfectly happy. They're just adapting to their environment. Pothos can grow perfectly well in low light or in sufficient light for most houseplants. They tolerate being dried out in between waterings, which brings me to my next point, is the number one cause of houseplant failure, in my experience, is overwatering. So succulents have become very popular in recent years, and they've been tagged as impossible to kill, which is not correct at all, as I'm sure many of you found out, that succulents can actually be very easily overwhelmed with too much water. So my recommendation for keeping succulents, such as this, here we go, sorry for camera, such as this aloe vera, I water this aloe once per month. And that is it.
Wow.
But when I do, I water it thoroughly. Succulents, some people have been led to believe that succulents want to be misted, but not watered thoroughly, and that's incorrect. If you imagine like a desert environment, it doesn't rain very often, but when it does rain, it rains a lot. So that's what these plants want, is infrequent, thorough watering. So when you do water them all the way through and then let them dry out completely in between waterings. So a lot of people will ask me, how often does my plant need to be watered? And that is completely dependent on the environment you have for them. So if your house is very warm and very sunny and very dry, then your plants will dry out a lot more quickly than if it was cool or humid inside your house. So one thing I like to do is I keep a lot of my plants, such as this pothos, in a pot that has drain holes in it and a drip tray underneath. I keep it in its plastic nursery pot, so I'm easily able to pick it up and feel if it needs water. I can feel how heavy it is, and it's perfectly happy right now. Again, the pothos likes to dry out a little in between waterings. So my second recommendation for an easy care house plant is Sansevieria, or snake plant. Sansevieria has actually been recategorized recently as a Dracaena, which I realized while researching for your show. So that came as news to me. Plants are now being, the genomes are being sequenced, which means plants that were previously categorized based on their appearance are now being categorized based on their DNA. And we're finding that they're more closely related to other plants than we thought.
Wow.
So my snake plant is a compact variety. I don't remember exactly which one it is. I don't have the tag anymore. Forgot to write it down. Keep your tags, folks. My snake plant is a compact variety, and I chose it because I knew I was going to put it in this spot. And that's something good to remember, because just like a puppy, just like a cute little puppy that you might adopt, that puppy is going to turn into a full-grown dog. The same thing goes for your plants. So if you find a cute little plant at the garden center, just keep in mind it could get very big eventually. So some snake plants can get 3 feet tall easily. Mine I chose because it keeps its compact size, and that's what I wanted in its mature height. So a good example of a plant that gets pretty big is one that's been very popular lately is the Monstera delicioso. These, you might also know it as the split leaf philodendron, which is a misnomer. It's not actually a philodendron. Might also be called Swiss cheese plant. So when I bought this one, it was about 1.5 feet tall, and now the top of the trellis is as tall. If I had a taller trellis, it would grow up to the ceiling easily and be perfectly happy doing that.
Wow.
So keep in mind that you're going to have to deal with these plants at their mature size, so have space for that.
So some other things that people should keep in mind, like if I'm trying to pick out the best plant, for my environment, because not all of us have the big open window, the big light coming in, or we may, have, very dry environment. Like what kind of things should people consider when they're choosing a plant for their location or for their home?
Okay. So it's, again, the amount of light you have. So this plant right here is a ponytail palm. Let me see if I can get a good picture of it for you. Woo! Okay, so the ponytail palm, right?
Mm-hmm.
This plant wants bright light. If you don't have bright light, don't get a ponytail palm. But if you do have bright light and you like to go out of town a lot, do get a ponytail palm, because as you can see, it has this thick storage trunk, which means it hardly ever needs to be watered. It stores water inside the trunk, so you water it, and then you can leave it again for a couple weeks in between waterings, and it'll be perfectly happy.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
So, another thing to think about is, like you said, humidity, right? So another really common plant that's being sold right now as zero care, which is untrue, are air plants. And I don't have any of them. Tillandsia. I don't have any of them right now because they actually do require care. And I just had a baby a few months ago, so I didn't want anything that was going to require a lot of effort from me right now. At some later date, I'll get some Tillandsia. So Tillandsia do need water. They don't survive just off of the air. So if you have a really humid spot, or if you have like a mister or something, a humidifier, that will help them be really happy. A good way to water an air plant is with a mister. I just got this at the grocery store. It's for olive oil.
I have that. I have that exact thing, but mine has olive oil in it, so I don't think my plant would like that.
Put olive plant, but water plant.
Yeah, I think they might appreciate that better.
Right. Some plants, like air plants, Tillandsia, appreciate very clean water. So our municipal water has chlorine in it. It has some other chemicals. Some plants don't care about the chlorine in the water. They could care less. Some plants really are bothered by it. A good example of that would be peace lily. So if you ever notice a peace lily that gets watered regularly, is enough light, it should be very happy. But if all of the leaf tips are brown, it's probably due to the chemicals in the water. So if you have a space where it's easy enough for you to collect rainwater, that's a good thing to do, a good practice for aglaonema, Chinese evergreens, peace lilies, air plants, and Dieffenbachia, I think are the big ones that really prefer rainwater. Or you can also let tap water sit out overnight and let some of the chlorine dissipate, and that'll make your plants a little bit happier if you're struggling with something like that.
Wow, that's pretty cool. I mean, I had no idea about, some of these plants being so particular about the type of water that they have, some Evian maybe for one of the plants.
Get you could use filtered water if you have that, and just let it warm up to room temperature would be perfectly fine. And like I said, the plants that I have, they don't care, because I prefer plants that aren't finicky, honestly.
Right. Well, and the interesting thing is, like, I mean, a lot of my plants, when it has a good deluge like we've been having the last week or so, I shove them all outside, because I'm like, you guys need this rainwater, because I mean, that's where they're originally from. They're from outdoors, and we're bringing them into our environment.
Mm-hmm. No, that's absolutely true. So speaking of watering, while we're on that topic, I've mentioned today that a lot of plants like to dry out some in between waterings. Some plants are very picky about not having what we call wet feet. So if your planter has a drip tray underneath it, if you have a ficus, like a fiddle leaf fig, double check after you water it that no water is accumulating in that drip tray, that it's not sitting in water. The roots can rot really quickly. And if the roots rot, then it can't uptake water anymore. So if you have a plant that's wilting, but it's been watered plenty, it's probably because the roots are rotten. There are a couple plants, though, and I'll show you one, that do like to have wet feet. So again, not all houseplants need the same care, but one plant that most people will recognize, this one's not in bloom right now, but this is the African violet. African violets like to stay moist all the time. So I have mine in a coffee mug, and it just sits in a little bit of water all the time. You can also put self-watering pots but this is a homemade self-watering pot.
Now we've got some video issues here right now, so I'm hearing you perfectly. There you go. I don't know what happened there. Whichever direction you moved was perfect, because we didn't get to see that plant in a coffee mug. So let's see that. So if you could show us that again.
Let's see.
Oh, that's precious.
See? And there's water inside. Yeah.
That's great. Now, like I've gotten into, as far as, some of my planting is concerned. I've been sharing with you some pictures. It's almost like on a daily basis the last couple of days of my baby basil. I bought a bunch of seeds. So I've got basil. I just planted some dill seeds. Got cilantro. I've got some leaf lettuce. So I should be good for cooking for a while. But my baby basil, it's so rewarding to see those little tiny leaves just pushing through towards the sky, to see them grow. So I mean, it's a real sense of accomplishment, having plants in our environment. Something
absolutely, it's incredible.
Now, something else to think about, that plants do also improve our environment, right? So they have more of a purpose than just making us feel kind of relaxed and back in touch with nature.
They do. They do. They absolutely do. So plants are respiring the same as we are. They're breathing, but they inhale carbon dioxide and exhale oxygen, which makes them perfect roommates for humans, because we need the oxygen that they breathe, and one thing though to note is that there have been some studies done about air purification and plants, and I think there have been some misleading conclusions drawn from that research. So plants are not able to filter any particulate out of the air, such as dust, mold spores, or pollen. But they absolutely can help to filter sort of chemicals out of the air called VOCs, or volatile organic compounds. So there is some truth to that. And I would just be wary of depending too heavily on your plants for purifying the air more than they possibly can, right? But they definitely can help some.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're sitting next to it, if you're in a very area with a lot of smog and stuff like that, it's not going to automatically clear up everything. But, it might actually make your, the oxygen a little bit higher. But isn't there also something else that they could do that you don't realize? Like if they're a flowering plant, to your environment?
Absolutely. So you might notice that other than the African violet, the plants that I showed you today don't have showy blooms. They're not grown for their bloom. And part of that is because as an asthma and allergy sufferer, plants like peace lilies and things, people can actually develop allergies to that. So I like to keep plants that are just grown for foliage indoors, and that helps, with my allergies.
Yeah. And it's, it's interesting because you get flowers and stuff like that. And you're like, oh, this is so great. You get fresh cut flowers. And the next thing you know, the next couple of days, you're just sneezing like crazy. And it's the pollen from those flowers that have been brought into the home. So you got to be careful with that kind of stuff. But, interesting that you mentioned, I'm actually going to circle back to when you talked about the ways that, your home environment and caring for these plants. It reminded me of a fern I got, and I had bought a $10 fern, and I don't know what happened to this fern, but it just literally tripled in size before the fall had hit. And so I was convinced that I was going to keep this thing and have this ginormous fern the next year. So I brought it indoors. And that was one of the biggest mistakes I've ever made in my entire life. Yeah, my environment's not humid at all. And so it was like literally, like every time I turned around, I had like little tiny fern leaves all over my floor. And for those who know me, they know I have big furry dogs. And so I would take the dog hair any day of the week over these little fern leaves because they just kept drying out and dropping. And I think it was because it was not humid enough, right?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Or bright enough. Ferns don't like to be in full sun, but there's definitely still more sunlight outside in the shade than there is inside, pretty much anywhere you could put it. So plants will acclimate to their environment. A good example of that is a ficus tree. A lot of people have purchased fiddle leaf figs, which is Ficus lyrata, and within 2 weeks, half of the leaves are gone. And a lot of that has to do with the plant will keep as many leaves as it can support with its root system and with the amount of light and water it's given. So if any part of that changes, if it's getting less light or less water, or the humidity changes a lot, it'll just drop its leaves because it can't support them anymore. So ferns are notorious for doing that when we bring them inside in the winter. Their environment suddenly changes a lot, and they just drop the leaves that they don't need anymore. They keep the ones that they do need, and that results in a huge mess for us to clean up.
If you can imagine this fern, no joke, it had to have been, like, if you consider the entire width of this thing, it was at least 3 feet wide. And so if you can imagine a 3 foot wide fern dropping leaves, it's like, I mean, I even got to the point where I was putting it in, I was making steamy showers for it and putting it in the shower, like, just live, like, moisturize, whatever it takes. But nothing was working for that little guy. Yeah. But actually, Emily, can you talk to us about, because, the stores and everybody, they're all famous for, after we buy our plants and we've got the pots and everything, the dirt that goes into them, that there's feed and seed and all this other stuff to go along with it. What are your thoughts about feeding your plants in addition to, just watering them and putting them in the right sunlight? I think we might have some audio issues there.
You're breaking up a little bit, Kathy.
There we go.
Quite.
Okay, I think I got you now.
Yeah.
So can you talk about feeding your plants, like fertilizer and things of that sort?
Feeding. Sure. So keeping plants in containers can be tricky because over time, if you don't repot them, the nutrients in the soil will dissipate, right? The plant only has the soil that it was originally planted in to draw from. So if over time you start to notice your leaves are yellowing or the plant is not producing as much new foliage, or it's not blooming when you think it should be, it might be time to fertilize. And there are lots of products, particularly products that are especially made for indoor use for houseplants. I like to use a slow release granular fertilizer on my plants. I do that because my dog does not bother my plants. If you have pets like cats that like to dig into your pots, then I wouldn't recommend using a granular fertilizer. I would use a liquid fertilizer so that there's not anything on top of the soil.
Yeah, because it's too tempting to dig in there and see what you got, because those might be good. Well, wonderful. Well, Emily, do you have any last minute tips or things that people should consider when it comes to beautifying their environment with plants?
Sure. Because I'm in sort of a good spot right now, I don't want to lose you, Kathy.
Yes, stay right there.
If we could just go outside.
Oh, cool.
Okay. How's that? Is that all right?
I'm still seeing you. This is good.
Can you still hear me?
Yep, I can.
Okay. Perfect. So, right on. So, like you mentioned, bringing some of your plants outside and letting them get some rainwater. There are a few of my plants that come out onto the front porch every summer. I have a shaded spot where they can stay outside and they prefer the humidity and the warmth. One of them is, like I mentioned, a ficus. So this is a Ficus benjamini, and it stays sort of compact like this. I wanted to get a fiddle leaf big, but I don't have space for it. So this is the ficus that I chose for my space. And as you can see, all of this new growth means it is very happy and is having a really good time living out here in this indirect sun.
Wow, that is a
So
happy.
I didn't do such a great job bringing my avocado tree outside. I started this avocado from a pit a few years ago, and I've been cutting it back to keep it compact. But one thing I didn't take into account was when I brought it outside, it had only been getting indoor light so far. It hadn't had full sun on its leaves at all. And unfortunately, I managed to give my avocado a little bit of sunburn.
Aww.
Now these new leaves that are coming out acclimated to the full sun, but this little guy was inside all winter, and unfortunately they don't make sunscreen for plants, so it's still able to emphasize with this leaf a little bit, but if I decided that the leaf was too unsightly, I could remove it, but I don't feel the need to. I just feel bad about it. So the last plant that I'm going to show you that I have out here is my Meyer lemon tree. My lemon tree, I noticed before I brought it outside for the springtime that the leaves were sticky. And I know as a horticulturist that probably meant that it had an insect infestation. And so I checked for the two most common pests that you'll find on indoor houseplants, and those are scale and mealybugs. Mealybugs are a little bit white and fluffy. Scale are very hard to see unless they're on the green leaves, but if they're on the woody part of a plant, they kind of blend in. It just looks like little bumps on the stem. Unfortunately, I found a scale infestation on my lemon tree. But because it had a well-established root system, I was able to cut back the branches of my lemon tree. I cut back all of them completely and actually cut all of the foliage off of this plant. And all of this new growth is within the last 6 weeks. It's flushed back out. I've been checking to make sure that there aren't any insects on it, and it looks like we are in the clear, so we're good. If you don't feel comfortable pruning your plants back like that, you can clean the leaves with rubbing alcohol in a paper towel, and then treat the soil with a systemic insecticide. You can find that at any garden center as well. But I just decided to risk it and cut it all the way back, and it has worked out beautifully. So
that looks amazing.
That's one thing. Hey, thanks. That's one thing that I wanted to encourage you guys to do as well, is to be brave with some of your houseplants. If you have a pothos in particular, like our friend from the beginning of the show, that's grown very long, like this one has, you can take cuttings of this and start brand new plants for yourself or for your friends. All you have to do is cut through the stem and then stick it in some water, and it'll root right from the stem. And I've done that several times before. So if you want any advice on that, again, just visit your local garden center and they should be able to help you out.
Wow, this is all some really great information, Emily. I really appreciate you coming on the show. And first of all, showing off all your great plants. So the air quality must be great for you, the hubby, and the baby. Just saying, with all that greenery going on.
I would hope.
Yeah. Well, Emily, so I really appreciate you taking the time, out of your busy schedule. Thank goodness, the little one's taking a quick little nap there. But I I really appreciate it. I appreciate all your knowledge there. And I think it's going to help some of our viewers here to, go ahead and take that first step and get themselves maybe just a pothos. That's a good starting point, to get them a plant and to, start their way to a fun environment with some plants.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh,
Well,
I hope this was helpful.
I think so. I think so. Well, appreciate it, Em. And, everybody, thanks so much for joining us here on The Village Voice. I'm your host, Realtor Kathy Smith. And until next time, I appreciate you tuning in. We'll see you later.